Are you ready to unlock your full potential? Motivational speaker, the comeback coach, and goal crusher Joe Rivera brings you inspiring leaders, incredible stories, and valuable lessons on how you can change, grow, and reforge your life. Now, here's your host, Joe Rivera.
What's up, what's up, what's up, what's up, what's up? What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Reforge Your Life Show. I'm your host, Joe Rivera, and here at the Reforge Your Life Show, we love to show you that the comeback is more than possible. And today, I'm super excited about the guest I'm bringing to the show. Y'all are going to love his energy. His story is incredible. He's the president of Element 502, Bill Reynolds. Welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks, Joe. Glad to be here, man. Good to talk.
Blessed to have you on the platform and grateful that we're able to share the platform together, man. I'd love for you to share with the audience your story. I mean, there's no way I'm as qualified as you are to tell that story. So please, man, share your strength and hope with the audience.
Sure. Yeah, I'll get you. I'll go from the kind of the thoughts, the ideas, and what got to Element 502. So 2008, I was working for a different marketing company. I really felt God's calling on my life that he wanted me to work more for him. I didn't really know how that was going to work because I had a newborn daughter. I'm working tons at the other marketing company. We're going to church. I'm leading Bible studies, and I just feel God asking for more. And I didn't really know where that was going to come from because I thought I was pretty tapped out. And I've got the feeling that he was really telling me that I was going to quit that marketing job and go to work for him. And so I did. That's what I did in 2008. I put in my notice. I'd worked for that company for many years. And off I go into ministry. And then in 2013, our church closes down. No one did anything wrong. No one stole anything or did anything. Just the church was shrinking. And as elders and pastors, we all prayed and fasted together and really felt God was saying, hey, I'm done with this work. It's time to scatter some seeds. And so 2014, I'm looking for my next ministry job. I'm like, oh, what is this? And I just, door after door just kept closing. And I didn't really understand what was going on. And then finally, towards the end of 2014, I got an opportunity to go back into more corporate stuff, as doing a consulting for a guy that owned a marketing company and had merged together a web design company and a content development company that he had bought. When we're going through that process, I get to the end of 2014. He pays me out for the contract and says, hey, you did a good job. You want to come run this thing for me as the president? And so January 2015, I sat down as president of the marketing company. March of 2015, that same owner comes to me and he goes, we got a problem. I said, what's the problem? He said, we're out of money. I was like, we're not out of money. The balance sheet shows that we still got money. He said, no. See, you're the president, I'm the owner. And I've been putting my own money into this thing for years. So he had a dream and a heart and a vision, and he had just been cash flowing it himself. But I didn't know that whenever I took the job as being the president. So we talked through some opportunities and some options. And then I went to my wife and I told her, I said, hey, we need to pray about this and figure out what God wants us to do, because this is not where we thought we were going to end up. And so she went off and prayed for a couple of days on it. I prayed for a couple of days on it. When we got back together, she said, I got bad news. I said, well, what's the bad news? She goes, I really think God wants us to buy this thing. I said, oh man, I got worse news. And she said, well, what's worse news? I said, well, I think God wants us to buy it too. So we got we got the real books, we got the real numbers. I ran it by a friend of mine who had actually from stories from years before. It was the one that had invited us to the church that I actually had left my marketing job to pastor at. This same friend that was the CFO at the time at a different company I worked for. I said, hey, Jim, can you help me out here and look at these numbers? And I think this is what I'm going to need to try to get 6 months out of this to see if it would work. And he takes a look at it and he goes, yeah, your numbers are right on. And I told him what the company did and what we were going to do. And he said, all right, that sounds cool. How are you going to get your funding? I said, well, I need you to introduce me to some people to get some money to put into this thing and see if we can't flip it around and roll it back out. And he called me back just a few minutes later. He said, me and my dad, we're going to fund this with you. And so the three of us went into business. May of 2015, we founded and started, and we took that company. It just turned into an asset purchase, really. There wasn't a whole lot of book of business or anything crazy in there. So we gutted it out, changed salaries, rehired back the staff, and off we go. And that's May of 2015. That got us to the start of Element 502. but it wasn't a hockey stick of just like, and then the Lord opened the heavens and money came running down. It was nothing like that at all.
It
It was
never usually is. There's always work.
no, there's some ups and downs in there, to be sure. But holding on to faith during that whole time, that was honestly, and even now, Joe, I mean, that's the only thing that really gives me an anchor, because my owners, the other guys that own it with me, we would have meetings and they would talk through and like, well, what's this and where's this and how is this happening and what caused this? And I told them, I was like, there's a lot of Jesus on our balance sheet, and they're not unfaithful people, or they are both men of faith. They just don't necessarily walk in that manner. And so, they wanted more concrete, more connecting the dots. And so we still have fun with that now. I'm gotten better on trying to give them more of the reports and stuff that they need to be good, stewards. And then on my side, the same thing there. So all good, all good.
That's awesome, man. Man, there's just something happens when you let go and let God. It is so amazing. I mean, and like you said, it's not always a straight line to success. There's going to be bumps in the road, but how you navigate through those bumps in the road is continue to lean into that faith. And that's what I'm hearing from what you're saying. And I'm a big believer in that, man. So congratulations on that. That's
Well,
awesome.
thanks. Well, I think the other part about those bumps too is Second Corinthians, whenever Paul talks through about the comforting others with the comfort that you've been given. I think part of that is that sometimes there's rough patches in our lives, but those are going to be great places for God to refine us and to grow us. And when we go through the other side without bitterness, it allows us to share that story with someone else who may be similar, or just be able to resonate with it, or just to be able to give an encouragement, because it's not a solo journey by any means.
No, it's not. And sometimes that waiting room, because that's what we get put in at times, right? When he's doing work that we don't even know that's getting done, we're in that waiting room. And sometimes that waiting room really tests our patience. And I think there's a lot of times where it's intentionally testing our patience. And it's our duty as spiritual beings living this human experience to be able to thrive in that waiting room, even in those difficult times.
And it's never easy, right? Because if God would ask me for my input, I mean, I could make my path a lot easier, but that definitely wouldn't. That definitely doesn't create the growth that we need sometimes.
Absolutely.
That you got to have that. You got to have some of that rub, that friction, to be able to create good growth. Yeah, you're exactly right. I like the waiting room term that you use. That's a fun one. I like that.
Yeah, because it's what it is, right? There's the time where you're going. There's the time where you're going through that real difficult time, and you got to kind of get out of that difficult time. But then you also still have a waiting room for the time where you're waiting to go to that next level. And it's how obedient you are in that waiting room. How much are you going to continue to lean into your faith? I'm a big believer that, when the more faith we have in God, the more he blushes and the more he opens more doors. And it's, God doesn't reward wishful thinking. He rewards aligned action. Teamwork makes the dream work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you got to move with your faith, but you got to also do the work that you're supposed to do behind it. It's not like, let's just pray on something and then all of a sudden, boom, it happens and doors start opening and mountains start getting moved. Now you got to put that work in, man.
Well, it's not fair if he lets you if he lets you take credit for something that he's working on, right? Because then you become your own. You become your own God. You become your own. You think you're the architect of all these different things, and God is kind. He doesn't want to punish. He doesn't want to take away. He doesn't want to use these horrible words. But sometimes, if our thoughts aren't right, it's kind of, my friend Steve. He always says, you can do it God's way, or you can do it God's other way. Yeah. So either way, it's all God's way. It just depends on how much, like you said, that aligned action. I love that. That's a great term.
Yeah, man. It's so true, man. So I want to go back to, some of the challenges that you went through along this journey, because as you mentioned a couple of times, it's not just the straight hockey stick up. I mean, there's challenges in between. So let's go back to when the church and how that unfolded, where you knew that, man, this isn't going to work. And I'm sure there's like some devastation that goes on there because, when we know that we have a calling, it's difficult to understand that, the church served its purpose for what it was meant to serve it for in that moment. And I'm sure when it first happened, when you realized, man, this isn't going to work, you weren't thinking about immediately the fact that, hey, that church did serve its purpose for the time that it was out there. So what was going through your mind when, that, I don't even want to call it failure. I want to call it a learning lesson happened in your life.
Yeah, no birds. Uh, it was weird because I told you in 2008 was whenever I signed. I wasn't the founder of the church. They hired me on as the associate pastor. The senior pastor was the founder of the church. He had been there. He just needed some help with administration and some other stuff. And I remember whenever they first brought me in, and I really kind of started making some changes and doing stuff. I fired some of the volunteers, and they called me in. They're like, "You can't fire volunteers, man." I was like, well, they're not doing their job. I came from corporate. I mean, if you're not doing your job, I met with you. I said, Joe, here's what I need you to do. I need you to help. I need you to do these things. And if you don't do that job, then we part ways. It's nothing mean. There's nothing angry about it. And so we had volunteers that weren't doing their job. And I met with them and I said, hey, I need you to do this and this and this. And they didn't do it. So I'm like, okay, well, I don't need your help here anymore. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, I don't need your help. And so everybody was like, wait, you can't fire volunteers. I'm like, sure you can. Just because you're not paying somebody doesn't mean that you have to work with them if they're not doing a good job. And like I said, they weren't doing a bad job. It just, they weren't in the right seat. It wasn't it wasn't a skill or a way that they were really gifted to work with. They were good people that were trying, just didn't work. So over the time of working with the church and for the church, I had to relearn some things. I had to change some of the ways that I approached and looked at stuff. Church life moves a lot slower than corporate life did for me. People would make massive choices and changes in on my corporate time up till then. And sometimes I could be at 8:00 in the morning, and by 2 p.m, we've got an action plan. We've got stuff assigned. We've got people going. We've got budgets going. We have all these things. Heck, it may take 3 months of church meetings and committee meetings and stuff once you try to do something to try to get that needle moving. So that was a odd thing. And so when we get to the end of the church and we start seeing attendance is pulling back and we're not getting young families, it was all the signs that if you were a typical church planner, that they would tell you, like, here's the warning signs on your dashboard. All those things started happening. And then, it felt like failure. It felt like something wasn't working right, or it wasn't that we were preaching a false gospel. It wasn't any of these things. It just felt like the church had done its part and was shrinking. And there was some comfort. There was some comfort from God as we were seeking him, and really felt like he was just saying, like, hey, this is my plan. This is my church. And this is what I need to have happen. But at the same time, you had families that had been together. You had people that had grown up together in their faith. We had kids that were growing up together. And so that was tough. It was tough. And just like with anything, there's always, the stories you tell everybody, the stories that people make up on their own, and then the real stories about what's going on and those kinds of things. And so, and that was tough. It was tough for my family during that time. It was tough for our senior pastor's family, just because, other people are like, hey, this isn't going to happen. We're not going to close down. We're not going to do this. I'm like, guys, it's just not feasible. I mean, we're not sustainable at this. And rather than just fighting for something that we really felt God was saying close down, we got to do all kinds of amazing stuff because we didn't own our building. We just were a pop-up church. So we would get there early on Sunday morning, drag out all the sound equipment, all of the stuff. And then, sometimes depending on where we were renting, sometimes we rented from another church. We rented in convention centers. The amount of setup was different, but we would set our whole church up and tear it all down on a Sunday. Well, all that equipment we were able to bless other churches around our area with that didn't have monies for those kinds of things. The people that came to our church were strong people with great conviction around marriages and child raising and pregnancy and healthy eating and all kinds of different stuff. And so sprinkling those people through all these other congregations around us here in Louisville, oh man, so many other churches were blessed because now your skills and your gifts are able to work in a different circle and to be able to bring that to other people. I mean, it was some amazing times in there. And so it felt failure-ish Especially whenever 2014, the whole year I'm trying to find another ministry job and I just can't see anything opening. And I'm really frustrated during that time. And then wondering, was something wrong? Did we do something wrong? Did we not listen correctly? And so, yeah,
What do
those are,
challenges of frustration look like?
well, and so 2014, I'm starting to call people that I'd met through ministry because I'd worked in ministry for years and saying, "Hey, our church is closing. I'm looking for another job. Oh man, you should call this person. They're looking for somebody." There's like area directors and big, larger ministries across the country that I thought, "Oh man," I was joking with people that. It pretty much said like your name needs to be Bill Reynolds. You need to live here. You need to do. The job description didn't have my name in it, but it just felt like it was custom for me. And so I would call, and we would think that, oh man, this is going to work out great. I would talk with whoever the executive director was, and that would go really well. And then we would go to a board meeting, and just suddenly things would go off the rails, or just people would say, "Oh yeah, we're going to send you an offer letter." And the offer letter it was almost like being a missionary. Like I had to raise my own support to have a job as plus work for this other ministry. And I'm like, guys, I can't do that. That's not fair to you or me, because guess who I'm going to spend more time working for to make sure that I have money? That would be me. And so it doesn't make sense to try to work for you and me at the same time, because then it's just two part-time jobs. And one of them is going to definitely put food on the table, and the other one is just me volunteering because of the salary that I'm able to raise. So it just was frustrating that I couldn't figure out why God was taking this opportunity away, because those 5 years in ministry, when I was full-time ministry, were some of the sweetest times that I had had, as far as with my family, interaction with other people, being able to just dig in. Oh man, it was just great.
So I'm curious because you mentioned something that's really important that I want the audience to pick up on. And there's times where God takes things away to give us back something even bigger, or has a bigger assignment for us, I should say. And when you kept asking yourself, "Man, why, God, why are you taking this away from me?" What did you learn was the reason that He took that away from you?
Well, I think part of it was that I was part of a teaching tool for other people. Just because those things where things didn't work out, there was growth opportunities inside of those ministries to figure out, why did this thing implode? Why did this stuff change? Which is never a fun place to be, because I think my call was obedience, was what I was learning. And it was able to help other people because me being obedient. If you think about some of the Old Testament prophets, right, and just some of the stuff that they had to do and some of the ways that God called them, you're going to walk around naked for a year. You're going to cook your food over this kind of fire. You're going to do these things. And it was their life, which wasn't happy during those times, other than just knowing that they were following God. Those are rough times, but their lives were then able to be used as a teaching tool for others. And I think some of that was what happened with some of those ministries that were in there. And then the other thing was just, being grateful, because everything that had happened was the reason I was even in that space, that place to look, was because God had already called me at one point before. And so, they talk about building Ebenezer's, these rock towers to remind you of things. Like every now and then, I think it's important to have those in your life to remember when God came through with this, and that's why you're here today, and being humble enough to remember those, but also understanding that you're not the guy that's in the driver's seat. That old bumper sticker that said "God's my co-pilot." It's not really the way it's supposed to work. It's supposed to, you got the wrong seats. You're in the wrong spot there. So.
Right. He's got to have control of the wheel, man. 100%.
Yep.
So let's fast forward to when you start Element 502, and so that was in 2014 is when the church was shut down, and then 2015. Am I right? Is that when you?
Yeah, 2015 is May of 2015 is when we made the investment and actually papered everything over to us.
Okay. So what are the challenges that you've had along the way?
Oh man,
taking on a business that was upside down when you took it, right?
Yeah, and so it was it was an amazing story because I met with the staff whenever we knew that everything was getting ready to move forward. And we were, as a company, we were going to have to move because our lease was up in April 2015. And so I had taken the staff to look at some new office locations. And we got done looking at one. And I said, hey, I need to chat with you all. And I said, what's going on? I said, well, as of May of 2015, I'll be the new owner. With my friends, we'll be the new owners of Element. It wasn't Element 502 at the time. I said, we'll be the new owners of the agency. And everybody was excited. They were like, okay, I like working with you, like working for you. I said, whoa, calm down a little bit. So you guys all have the opportunity to come back as employees. That's all good. But that Friday, that was on a Wednesday. That Friday was payroll day. I said, well, we got couple of different troubles here. Number one, we don't have enough money to make payroll on Friday. So you're not going to get paid on Friday. And I told him, I was like, hey, if that's put you in a hardship, talk to me in a separate meeting. Tell me what's going on. We'll work out something. I said, don't tell me you're going to sue me or anything to try to get money because there's no money to pay you. That's why we're not paying payroll. It's not like we're trying to play games. But until we've got everything 100% signed, we're not putting money into the checking account to make sure that we can pay you. But I've got checks coming in. We got work coming in. I'll be able to pay you Tuesday of next week at the very latest. So I'm supposed to pay them on Friday. It'll be next Tuesday. And people are like, and they're not real happy. I said, well, but it gets better. So this is your last paycheck at this much. I'm going to have to cut everybody's salary, including mine, to be able to give us enough money to be able to make this runway start to work. And so I'd cut everybody's salary, including my own, by 10%. And they all came back to work that next week and stuck around. Now, over the time, we started losing people. Some folks jumped. I was very transparent, probably too transparent sometimes with the financial state of the company and with other stuff. But I didn't want anybody to feel that they were misled or taken advantage of that was in there. And then, making hard choices throughout. We had to do layoffs at one point, which was awful. That's probably the worst thing I've ever had to do. As far as just being a business owner. And the reason I say that is because when you really talk about laying off, somebody didn't do anything wrong. It's not like a performance issue. It's nothing like that. It's just a financial issue. I just don't have enough money to pay you. And so what you're really telling people is I lined up everybody in the company based on their value to the company, and you guys are at the bottom. So I'm going to have to let you go. And that was horrible. That was absolutely horrible, doing things like that. And just feeling that God was really had something going and really not understanding why. And then to the point of we were ready to close the business down because clients were pulling back. It was right in the 2016 election with Trump and Clinton, and people were pulling back on their marketing. They said, we don't really know what the world's going to look like. We're not sure what tax implications are going to happen, any of this stuff. And so I actually had told my staff, I said, look, we're probably closing after Thanksgiving. I got enough money to make it till then. So if you guys want to go find another job, I'd appreciate you keep working for me during that time because we owe people stuff and I'm paying you. So I'd like for you to work for me sometime in there, but I'm also fine for you to go look for another job because I don't want you to get stuck here. But nobody would hire them either, not because they worked for us, but it was the same problem in the economy that people were scared and holding back. And so here I am thinking, God told me to go down this path, and then I'm watching this whole thing sink. And the spoiler, it didn't happen. We didn't close. We stayed open. We went to bed, and then Trump won the election. People weren't as scared anymore. Our phone started ringing again. And so we were able, and I'm not saying that's all Trump. It was just because people felt confident again with what their investments were going into. And so, it's ups and downs in there. And those are just some of the stories. I had to fire myself from the company to make payroll because the owners said, because we knew that we had to do another cash raise. So I had to ask my investors for some additional monies. And they said, well, you got to cut the staff for us to do that because I think we think you're overstaffed. I was like, oh gosh, that's awful. That's too much. But we'll do our best. And I was afraid if I cut too deep, I was not going to have a company anymore. So I ended up firing myself during that time, which caused a lot of, my investors were not happy at all. It was hard on our family because we went several months without a paycheck. just investing back in the company. I still worked. I worked like I was getting paid. I just didn't get money, and it wasn't deferred. It really was just I am off the books.
Yeah.
So some things like that that happened in there. Again, I felt God was leading us in that direction. I didn't really know why, and I can't tell you I had the peace that passes understanding because I was scared to death going through that. And so I think that's kind of one of the other lessons in there is just because you're fearful doesn't mean that you're on the wrong path.
Yeah.
Just sometimes it just helps you keep your eyes open and your head on a swivel, keep that focus up.
Yeah, and I'm thank you for sharing that, because that's there's a few things that you said that's really important, right? Number one, a big learning lesson that I want the audience to pick up on is how important it is to sacrifice when it comes to growing your business and taking it to the next level, because this is a perfect example of someone who sacrificed themselves, sacrificed, just so much was sacrificed and put on the line at this moment. I mean, you sacrificed your own financial situation. You had to sacrifice people who worked for you's financial situation and tell them, you know what, listen, if you want to go work somewhere else, you could go work somewhere else. And you also had to cut people's payroll in the beginning to get to where you are today. So there's a lot that had to get sacrificed in the big scheme of things to get to where you are. And then also, how important it is to stand by your decisions, because I'm sure that a lot of those weren't easy decisions to make, but you stood by the decision and said, you know what, I got to stand by this. And I think every single successful entrepreneur that I know comes with having to make tough decisions, but sticking by those decisions, not second guessing your decisions. And even if there is some part of second guess, because I'm sure there was, you still stood by those decisions. And, you live and die by those decisions. And sometimes those decisions are going to work out, and sometimes they're not. And we got to learn from those decisions. But something else that you said that's really important is to move forward even when there's fear there. And it's so important because, faith and fear could be looked at very similar, right? It's something you can't touch, you can't feel, but you know it exists. The big difference is fear will build a prison around you. Faith builds empires. Fear will lock you into survival mode, and faith will create legacies. So if you choose to lean into your faith to overcome your fear, you're going to win 10 times out of 10.
Yeah. And that's I think the opposite of that is also like, just because you're on a path and things seem to be easy right now doesn't necessarily mean you're in the wrong path either, though, right? Like it's God's path. So it's just more checking in with the navigator, making sure that everything's moving in the direction that he's wanting, that's in there, and trying to get some of those that feelings out of the way.
What are some ways that you could share with the audience that are ways to know that you're going down God's path? Because
I think we
follow a different path, unfortunately. So, what are your?
I think being open and sharing with others, I think, is a huge one. And what I mean by that is that, talking with folks, tell them what you're going through, tell them what your convictions are, tell them what you're doing, so that way you have some accountability and some other things in there. Because when we were hurting, I'm not saying like we're just on easy street, but when we were really, really bad shape, there were opportunities to be able to do different marketing, different things that would be able to make us more money to be able to do, but they didn't align with my faith values and with other things. And so I couldn't do that, even if it meant, not cashing that check. It just didn't matter because it wasn't going to be honoring God. And how would God bless something that didn't honor him? Yes. That was never his way. So being in that, but to do that, you have to have other people around you that you can trust to be able to be able to call you out for the accountability side, but also just to share. I didn't need friends like Job had, where they're all saying, well, obviously you're a sinner and you're just a horrible person and you're not paying attention. I don't need yes men either. I need people that will call me out and ask me questions, but really walking through that. And then just in the middle of that pain, making the choice to run towards instead of away. Running towards God if He's there, and not away from, because the enemy's waiting, with a comfort, with an easy chair and a footstool, man. Anytime you're ready to jump off and you want to come over here, it's not going to end there. It's not going to end well. It's just going to turn bad.
Right.
But man, in the midst of, it's tough. So being able to dive deeper into that, and thankfully I'd come off of working for the church, so I had tons of faith-based people around me. From a business standpoint, also to talk about how do you be a Christian business person, not a Christian business, but a Christian business person. So those were also just valuable. And so that counsel of many around was probably the best thing I could do. And it was intentional to stay there, even whenever I was going down paths where people were like, this doesn't make sense, to be able to get that feedback.
Man, I love that, because I'm a big believer in you are who you surround yourself with. And if you want to elevate your business and your life, hang around people that are going to help you elevate your business in life, not people who are going to bring you down. And it sounds like your support group is something you really leaned into. And the important piece you also mentioned was the accountability piece. And
oh yeah.
That is so valuable, so important, because accountability is everything when you're running your business, and having people around you that you could be able to hold you accountable, and also for you to be able to hold them accountable, and become kind of like accountability partners. It's one thing that I'm big on, and it's something that I, in my coaching business, I strive with, because accountability is a big piece in success and growth for anybody. And I want to go into the values you mentioned, which is really important. But first, I believe that, when we build a new belief system, there's an old belief system that has to get shattered. What are some of the limited beliefs that you had to crack through to get to where you are now? I mean, and those limited beliefs might still come up, because they're always going to be there, but you've learned how to overpower them and that they don't control you. So what are some of the limited beliefs you had to get through?
I guess saying that I'm not qualified is probably the biggest one. I had to start selling for us. I've never before had been a salesperson, had been in that role. I'd been in operations and nuts and bolts side of businesses, not the sales side of it. I'd always supported the salespeople. But suddenly, because of changes and people leaving, I had to start selling, or we were going to die. Because if you're not selling anything, you're not getting new business in, then it's hard to run a business. So learning that, which sounds simple, like, oh, you just had to do something different. Well, I mean, it was everything around it, because everything that I thought I knew, I'd learned from other folks that were around. That just wasn't the way that we needed to do things. And then also, people would talk about, doing limiting beliefs, or doing that mentality of I'm working from a place of abundance, or I'm working from a place of fear and going in there. Well, you can work with an abundance mentality, but you better make sure that there's something there to cash the check at the end, because somebody's going to call due on that debt. So, being abundant. And then what are you joying in? What are you glorying in? Are you glorying in God? Are you glorying in other things? What does that look like? That's in there. And so those, I guess the biggest limiting beliefs are that I'm not qualified, or I can't do, because God can empower to do anything that's in there. And then also just that idea of how much do you share your faith as you're talking to people? Like how open are you about it? How do you bring those in? Oh, if this person finds out, wonder if they won't do this, or if they'll treat me different or think different. It doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, we're going to be with God a whole lot longer. You're going to be with that other person. Yeah. So let's follow him and work on his plan and his paths. But I say all this, it's not like I'm going to write a book, or I've got all of these things taken care of here. It's more from the standpoint of, I don't really know what I'm doing still. I just make choices along the way. And then the whole idea of letting tomorrow take care of itself. I'm still not good at that. I still overplan and hyperplan and go in. And sometimes I just imagine God just kind of sitting over in the corner of the table, just kind of sitting there waiting, like, you'll figure it out here in a minute that I'm still back here waiting for you. You'll come over and find me and come and talk. And so,
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
he'll
yes.
let you spin around. He'll let you spin
You
around.
sure will. You sure will. Sitting there like, man, when are you going to figure it out? You just got to let me take control of the wheel, man. Stop trying to control it. Stop
That's
trying to
it.
take your will back, man. So listen, I really believe that when we do crack through those limited beliefs, we build a new belief system. And when we do build that new belief system, there's core values that are uncovered. And
Mhm.
those core values are values that we lean into when times do get difficult. Because as we spoke about, life's going to continue to throw you curveballs. You're going to continue to get hit to your knees. It's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get up.
Yep.
And the times you get up, you're leaning into these values to be able to rise to the occasion. What are some of the core values that you uncovered along your journey?
I, I tell people it's the advice that your mom and grandma always gave you. Just always tell the truth because
Mm,
if you tell lies, you got a lot more to keep track of.
yeah.
So just being honest about what you're doing and being genuine. If that's not who you are, be genuine about who you are. And if that doesn't attract or work with other folks, okay, well, there's somebody out there for you, or else you're going to find a new job. But being disingenuine is hard. If you're trying to say that you accept or believe or go along with something that you don't, that's never a good spot to work from.
Yeah.
And then just treating people as people. All of our employees. The way that we run our company, the way that we talk. It used to hurt my feelings. People would say that we weren't a real company. Especially the spouses of people that worked here at our company,
Yeah.
because they would like, that's not a real job. That's not how jobs are supposed to work. People don't work like that. People are like, it is a real job. We're making money. We're paying people. I mean, we're not just here having a good time, but the way that we work as employees, the way that we all work together, the way that we support each other, the way that we function. I like that it's different. I like that people recognize that there's something different about what we do here. I like that. I like our customers come around. So it's new in there, and so having that core belief of how we treat people is a huge one. And then just remembering again that it's God's business, and that's my hardest one, honestly, Joe. I keep forgetting that all the time, or I keep trying to hold on to it. I'm like, Lord, it's your business. It's real easy to make it God's business whenever it's going really well, and I
Mhm.
feel like, oh, God's just blessing it. But whenever things are going rough, I want to grab that. We were joking about the God is my co-pilot. That's when I'm trying to kick him out of the seat and get back. Hold on, I just need some help here. I need to fix it, and that's a tough one. I struggle with that
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
time.
And
I
he's
struggle
like,
with a
man, how
lot.
many times you got to crash the car by yourself before you realize I got to be the one driving?
Exactly, but here I am pushing you out, pushing him out, and jumping right back in. So
That's right. That's right. The stubbornness behind it is unbelievable, right?
yeah, pig-headed
Uh,
determination.
that's right. So I'd love for you to share with the audience where they can find you and what you have going on now.
Oh, sure. So one of the stories that helped shape us was my 599 haircut story. So you can go to 599haircut.com and download it's a free PDF that just takes you through your messaging and marketing. And when I say free PDF, it's 100% free. You don't have to enter an email. You don't have to do anything. But the story behind that was that it's been several years ago. And I will start with a disclaimer. After I wrote this story down and had my wife proofread it, she asked if I was stealing it from a commercial. I didn't realize they made a commercial that had this exact same story in it, but I swear mine happened first, and I think they stole it from me. But either way,
Yeah.
so there was a national haircut chain. They were running a special 599 haircuts that week, and so I drive in. I need a haircut. I got an event coming up. Pull in, go in and tell me it's going to be an hour and a half wait. It's after work. I can't wait an hour and a half, but I got to get my hair cut. So I drove further into downtown and stopped at a barber shop. You walk in, there's a guy there with a chair, barber pole, the whole thing, $15 haircut right on the wall, $15 for a men's haircut. So I sat down and said, so he's starting to cut my hair. And I said, hey, I want to ask you a question real quick. And I said, it's about your haircut price. He said, price is on the wall. I know the price is on the wall. I'm not negotiating the price of my haircut, especially since I'm already in the chair and you got scissors. But I asked him the question. I said, tell me the difference between your haircut and the $5.99 haircut.
Right.
And because I told him about where I came from and how I got there. And he just kind of smiled as he's cutting my hair. And he goes, well, that's easy. I fix $5.99 haircuts. So that's that whole idea of, if you're going to chase price, that's where you get to. That's no good. Making sure that you understand value over price, and that you may not be the most expensive, you may not be the least expensive, but as long as you're getting a good fair price and a good value, that's a good spot that's in there. So go to 599haircut.com. You get some good exercises that take you through the difference between when you're talking about price versus value, and just helping people to scope that message. And then you can get time on my calendar. There's a link in that PDF where you can download it, get on my calendar. Happy to chat, talk through any questions of marketing or just things that people are working through. Because if I don't give back, then you never pull people along the way with you. And we were just talking about accountability and other things. I think that's part of the reason I have this position, is to be able to speak back into others and to be able to give as God has given me.
Yes, man. Yes, yes. When you're giving gifts, you got to give them back, man. That's right. So there's a few questions that I ask all my guests on the show.
Okay.
The first one is, when you hear the word purpose, what does that mean to you?
I'm a big believer in spiritual gifts. I'm a big believer that God has crafted us to do things for Him. But it's like being the best player on the team. He didn't just create you to do this one thing and fit into this cog and be able to do this one job. And it wasn't like that's the only thing that you can do, or it's going to screw up God's plan if you don't. But He made a plan. He gave you talents and skills, and He said, "Hey, you want to come and join along this with me?" And so that's what I think of purpose is accepting the invitation for the way that God has made us and the plan that He has put together.
Amen. Amen. That's awesome. And when you hear the word reforge, what comes to mind?
Pain. It's reforging is never an easy thing. There's usually something that's got to be fixed. So they're going to, if you think of it all the way back to the root, you're melting down steel or metal of some kind. There's fire. It's dirty. It's rough. There's something that's got to be cleaned and purified, and then something new made. But that process isn't always easy. It's dirty. It's gritty, and so I think of some pain that's going to be in there, but with a purpose, not just to cause pain.
Yes. Pain before the glory, man. Pain before the glory. It's got to come. And so there's somebody out there right now who's looking to reforge their life in whatever domain of life, their health, their finance, their relationship, their business, and they don't have the tools. They don't have the know-hows. What's one piece of advice you could give somebody that's looking to reforge their life?
I think remember that God can do all of these things and more. That's right. I like from my story, whenever I said that I was leaving the marketing company to go work for the church, I remember I told God, and I was pretty arrogant. I was like, and I'm not going back to school, because me and school, we don't get along. Yeah. And I'm not going back to seminary. I'm not doing this. And the way that you laughed was basically what I heard God do in my head. He's like, seriously, that's all you got? Is that you don't want to go to school? I mean, how many? And look through the Bible. How many people were called by God to be a prophet or to go be a teacher, or go here? And it started with, and then 4 years later, after going to seminary, they went out or they went to Hebrew school. That never happened. And so, just remembering that God can fill in the blanks and do all of those things.
He always does, as long as you allow Him to, man. You got teamwork makes the dream work, man. Man. So, Bill, what's one thing that the audience doesn't know about you that you enjoy doing for fun?
Oh, for fun? I really, really like meeting with new business owners and talking to them. Well, I always tell people, at least you go in eyes wide open. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's if you're going to make a choice for your business or something moving forward, it may not make the most sense, as long as you know that. And at least someone told you, hey, I can't stop you from doing it, but maybe I can give you some guidance along the way. And so I really like talking with people and sharing and just encouraging along the way. And I guess people would probably know that once they hang out with me a lot, but it's not like advertised kind of thing. It's just like me telling you in that $5.99, there's a link in there to get on my calendar. There's no cost involved with any of that stuff, but just keep sharing, keep going.
That's right. That's right, man. Meeting new people always is a way to grow also.
Yep.
And because we could all learn from each other. We got to find those learning lessons, and that's how we grow, man. That's the beauty of this world that goes round and round. And God makes everyone with gifts inside of them. And we all have the opportunity to bring those gifts out. And sometimes when we connect with others, it's a way to bring that gift out, man. So that's a good thing to have that you enjoy doing for fun. Bill, I really appreciate you coming through on the show, man, and dropping your knowledge, the jewels out there for the audience. And I knew you were going to bring the story, the energy, and I knew the Holy Spirit was going to be in the room, man, and it sure was. But I really appreciate you, man.
Yeah, it's been great meeting you, and great just hearing, the impact you have on your audience, of just saying that, hey, it's not all name it, claim it. It's not all rainbows and puppies. That, sometimes the grit and the dirty is where God's working before the glory. And I love that message. So thanks for giving a voice to those people, Joe. Just continue to lead well, my friend.
I appreciate you, Bill. And for everybody watching, don't forget, man, LFSS. Like, follow, subscribe, and most importantly, share the episode, because there's somebody out there right now who's looking to reforge their life and their business, their finance, their relationship, their health, and they don't have the tools. They don't have the know-how. So you sharing this episode or past episodes could help them reforge their life. Stay productive, stay purposeful, and stay blessed, y'all.
You've been listening to Reforge Your Life with your host, Joe Rivera. Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. To learn more about Joe Rivera and how he can help you or your organization reforge your life and regain your place at the top, head on over to withjoerivera.com and follow Joe on all social platforms. The Reforge Your Life podcast was produced by Thrive Loud Productions. Thanks for listening.